Raw Talk is opinion-based, and everyone is encouraged to do their own research. You know I'm back for another Raw Talk episode, brought to you by Arthur Raw and Discussion Combustion Productions. Give it up, man. So happy to be back on this one. And the question is, what's your code? Like, what is your moral code? What are some things that you lean on? And honestly, this one's just kind of a fun one for me because I put together code like an acronym. So I was thinking about this, and to me, what code means to you? What's my code that I don't want to break? What's my code that I don't want to break? Well, for me, it's to stay consistent, optimistic, dedicated, and executing. So I'm just going to break down what all these words mean to me and how you can't break my code, how nothing coming at me is going to break my code because I will maintain these things, okay? This is like an attack 5, which I'm still working on those things, okay? I fluctuated the weight a little bit. It was going up. I'm trending down again. I'm going to get to that 185. I'm going to attack 5. I'm going to focus on my 5. We're going to act immediately, and you can't break my code. So for me, being consistent is the first one here. So we're all consistent in something. And I didn't come up with this, but this information is a huge thing. So if we are all being consistent in something. And what I mean by that is you might be consistently having the bad habits right now. Like me back in the day, I was consistently doing the wrong thing, chasing the dragon, chasing opiates. I was doing that consistently. And by doing all those bad things consistently, it really added up to a really bad situation, right? The car is getting repoed, horrible credit, all the bad things. So I consistently did something to build that, okay? So just like I consistently did that, I can consistently do good things to build a good circumstance. And that's for everyone on this planet. We're all consistently doing something right now. Is it going to be beneficial or detrimental? And you can be the judge of that. So that's one point that I wanted to make. And then so that consistency thing, it's all happening, and we have to be consistent as well when it comes to like doing things and actually seeing things through. We have to be consistent. So focus on what you're being consistent on. Be honest with yourself what you're being consistent on. And if it's things that are not going to be beneficial for your lifestyle or who you want to be, then you gotta start cutting it out, and it might take a long time. Be patient in the process. None of this is immediate turnaround. We got to stay dedicated. We have to stay in it. I'll get to the dedicated one soon. So my first one, that's consistent, staying optimistic. Just like the last episode, I went over a bunch of things on how I stay optimistic. If you didn't check that one out, you should definitely give it a listen. I kind of just break that down, but I wanted to think about another level of being optimistic, because to be optimistic, you almost have to you have to choose to focus on positive energy. You have to make a choice. And I do believe that, let's look at it like there's two parallel lines running straight next to each other all the way till death. All right, so we got these two parallel lines running till death. One is positive, one is negative. And what I mean by that is there is positivity right next to us. It's always there, right here with us for our entire life. But so is this negativity as well, right? Like they're both there. They're both consistently there our entire lives, but we can actually make a choice on what we want to focus on. And one thing that I heard this perspective recently was the more that you are focused on being optimistic, having positive energy, the more that you are seeing that within yourself and life around you, the more that you actually see negativity as well. And that only makes sense, because if I was lost in negative and naive about it before, I wasn't really aware of that. I wasn't even seeing that, even though I was immersed in it. But then once you kind of get out of that negative thought process and you start getting into a positive thought process, then you actually see more negativity than you did before. So we have to be cautious on this path and be careful on where our mind is going and make that choice to be optimistic, to look at the positive. So that's what optimism is to me within my code that I'm talking about right now. Is I know that there's this positive and negativity around me at all times, both, but I'm focused on the optimistic. I'm focused on the positive, and that is a choice. So I'm staying dedicated to that. And that brings me to how I look at dedication. Now, being dedicated, this might be one of the most difficult parts of my code, because being dedicated, look, I slip sometimes. Like, I know I want to do something. I know I want to be on my diet. I know I want to work out. I know I got to stay dedicated with all these different things. And sometimes you slip, and sometimes you mess up on the diet, or you don't work out, or you're objectifying things in ways that is really not the healthiest, So look, I'm all on my own journey here too, and I'm still trying to make improvements to become the best version of myself. So I've had to look at myself and had some hard conversations, and I'm going through some stuff still, but I'm staying dedicated to it because that's part of my code. And that's why it might be one of the most difficult things, is because it's up to us to stay dedicated. And you could be motivated, but it's being dedicated gets it done. Dedicated gets it done even when you're not motivated. And that's why it's one of the toughest parts, because also when you're dedicated, like, you're committing to something until you die, right? Like, are you really committed? Are you 1 foot in or 1 foot out? If you're not willing to, like, treat this dedication to bettering your life like a marriage, and you're going to do it till death, then I don't believe that you're going to see it all the way through. You have to have this mentality, like, nah, even though I slipped a little bit, I'm still this is till death. And that's a big commitment to make, and a daunting one. So I hope you're a warrior, and whenever you're telling yourself these hard truths, like, you're willing to actually be dedicated to seeing it through, because nothing feels better than when you look back after 24 months, after 3 years, whatever it is, and you look back and you're like, I did that. I made that happen. I was dedicated, and no one could take it from me. No one could break my code on that. Man, that feels good. That feels good, man. Yeah. Dedicated is doing the right thing for the right reasons, even if it's hard. Will you do the right thing even if it's difficult? You already know I dropped an episode on that alone. And then the last one that I got here is executing. Now, what can I actively do today to achieve my goals? I have to execute on things. And the Attack 5 is a big one for me. That's when I came up with that, and why I came up with that. And I have to keep going back to that, right? Because if I'm being honest with myself, then I know that I could still do better on all that. And that's my self-accountability. And honestly, I'll know I'll be in a better mood if I'm sticking to my guns. Or else I'm just proving to myself that I'm not 100% about it. And that's like frustrating. So, like, I can only blame myself for any of that frustration, because executing is where the rubber meets the road. And what you might be executing on, like, your goal might change. Like, you don't always have to be executing the same things. And honestly, that can get, it's good to have routines, but it's also good to break the routines. So in my mind, executing is making sure that I am sticking to that, sticking to a, like, productive day, and executing on something. Even if my goals change, we still need to be executing on something, not just aimlessly sitting around. Executing to me is really being active and working on it and going in and getting after it. So that's my code, man. And I don't, we all should have our own code that we hold up, and that we are willing, we could fall back on this, right? So for sure, being consistent for me, being optimistic, being dedicated, executing on all this stuff, that's changed my life. And that's my code. You can't break my code. What's your code? Raw Talk, baby. I'll be back again next week. Let's go.